All right, we are live. Technology is working. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for everybody who's watching and tuning in. I'm Nancy Sheed of Sheed Communications, and I'm here with Vicky Vitarelli, my cohort in crime and marketing. She is V.V Marketing and the creator of the Organized brand. And Vicky and I were lucky enough to work on a project this summer with our guests today, Alex Jamieson and Bob Gower, who were launching a new book. And it was very exciting and looking for a little bit of support as they had a few challenges. But we were honored to get to spend some time with them this summer before they launched their book. So I'm going to look away from the camera and give a little bit of background so you know about Alex and Bob. Alex is a success mentor, life coach, professional women who want it all, or are what we were just talking about, Alex, who are looking to have it all.
Doing it all. Now they want to have it all.
Got it. She's the best-selling author of Women, Food, and Desire and co-creator and co-star of the Oscar-nominated documentary Super Size Me and a highly sought-after wellness expert. We'll put links to Alex and Bob's information in the notes at the bottom of this. And then Bob helps organizations move faster, create better products, become happier, more engaging places to work. He's the authority on Agile. I'm going to say that right? Agile or Agile? Bob?
Either works.
Okay. Software development, lead theory, and responsive organizational design, and advise leaders at numerous companies, including GE, Ford, Chanel, PG&E, and Spotify, and creating more effective organizations. He's the author of Agile Business, A Leader's Guide to Harnessing Complexity, and speaks regularly on organizational development and leadership. So I welcome you both. It's very exciting to regroup and be with you. And I'd like to just turn it over to you guys and let you give us the kind of background. Tell us about the name of your book, which I'll let you do, and how that came to be.
Here's our book. It's called Getting to Hell Yes. Yay!
Awesome! The blue looks even better on the screen.
It does.
It's a very nice blue.
It looks really good. Great. Nice touch to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about our book. So this book is a very, very simple tool. It's small. You can read this in 90 minutes about. And it is a way that it's a conversation structure. It's how to talk about emotional or highly charged topics in an easy, non-confrontational way. It's a simple 4-part tool that we use all the time, that we've been teaching, and we were getting so much feedback and so many requests for what was that conversation structure again? How did that go? That we were like, write this down, and this is what it became.
Yeah, the goal of the conversation is to have 2 or more people. Actually, it could be 1 person too.
We've used it by ourselves.
We use it individually. But it's about getting. Well, I mean, it's in the title, "Getting to Hell Yes," or alternatively, getting to a hell no, which is also not a bad outcome early on in a process. What you don't want is that maybe this would be a good idea, and then you run into trouble down the road once you're invested. So the idea is to either be a hell yes to doing something together and knowing what you're up to and knowing where all the potential interpersonal landmines are, or being a hell no, figuring out that there are so many interpersonal landmines that this would be a really bad idea. This thing we're about to do is a bad idea, and we should not invest any more time or energy or money in doing it.
And before I met Bob, we actually started teaching this in some relationship workshops that we were running together. And we realized this is such a great tool. We should use this. So we started using it in our relationship, and then we started using it in a business context. And I have to admit, my own personal story with having important conversations was I felt like they were all confrontations, and somebody had to win and somebody had to lose. And it was a very tough dynamic for me because I don't like to be mean. I don't like to be confrontational. I want everyone to I like fairness, right? I have Libra in my chart, all about the balance and fairness. And not to turn off people who hate astrology, but there you go. That's what I think. And
they're not our peeps if they're not here. That's fine.
But this structure makes it so simple. Everyone has a very clear space to share the different aspects of what goes into important decisions, whether it's between a couple or on a team or even in families. So it becomes a really simple, fair, egalitarian way to get through tough topics.
And I was about to ask you sort of how that came to be, but at what point did you have the aha of this, we have to put this into a book or a download? Like, what was that?
We're not very sharp people sometimes. It took us a long time to figure it out that this should be written down. I think, you know what, Alex has written 4 books. I've written 1 book. We're not a stranger to writing. We're not strangers to, getting content and material out there. But I think this conversation structure, we kept getting phone calls about it. People kept calling us and asking us to walk through it again. And it took us a long time to realize, like, oh yeah, we should make something. As a matter of fact, the book actually started as a Google Doc. We were just like, we're tired of explaining this thing over and over again. Let's just create a Google Doc that we can send to people. And so one Saturday, 2 summers ago, we started writing, and we soon realized, we're like, wait a minute. Well, if we're going to write, we should launch it. Maybe this should be a long Medium post. Maybe this should be a blog post, or and then we ended up writing 25,000 words. We're like, okay, now we have a lot. And then we rewrote it several times, and then we figured out that it was actually more of 9,000 words. It came out to about 9,500 words. That was the appropriate length to get you. We wanted to empower people, be able to if you've never heard of the system before, here's a thing. We can now, it's a tool, right? We can now learn the tool without us being involved. Because originally it was what can we send people to who have heard about this before, just to remind them? Right. And then we expanded into how can we empower people who have never heard about this before? Then it got really big, and then we were like, no, we padded this with way too much stuff. Let's trim it down.
My favorite story is that one of our past workshop attendees called Bob when Bob was in the back of a taxi and said, please take me through it again. I need to use this. I've got an important conversation I need to have. And so Bob spends, 20 minutes or so telling his friend on the phone. And when he finishes his conversation, the taxi driver's like, hey man, that was great. I really got a lot out of that.
So we're like, oh. And what I mean by us being kind of slow is that we both have our own businesses. This is definitely a side project for both of us. And it's taken us a long time to get it out because we didn't devote a lot of time to it because we have other things going on. But I think it took us a long time to realize there's so much market signal coming our way that this is a valuable tool, that maybe we should make a tool about the thing that people are asking us for rather than about other stuff, And so that's really the story of the birth of this book.
And I love that you just mentioned market signal, and I'll turn it over to the marketing guru, Vicky, in terms of sort of how we came to you in terms of, you've acknowledged, okay, we've got this thing, but I think, Vicky, you can kind of set up it was new to the two of you, right?
Yeah, I remember having the conversation when we first got together. So you guys made your decision within your own framework, right? Of we're going to do this. And then it's you hear many business owners, even if it's just a side project or something, now what? Oh, we've got to do this. And there's this amazing cloud of ideas. And then everything starts coming at you, and then more things because it's out there. Yeah. And it was exciting. That's where I love to come in, where it's a big, lots of stuff and lots of mess, and figure out, okay, let's create the path. And Nancy and I, got with you guys to figure out, what is the brand? What is it going to be? And that was a big part of our meeting and conversation. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how we got to the clarity around you guys deciding, okay, we are going to do this, and then sort of the business side of it, if you will, and how you got there.
Well, it was interesting. We've both written books. I've written 4 other books with traditional publishers, and we thought, well, we've got, if we're going to make it a book, we got to make it a book. So let's, the whole process of putting together a proposal. And I talked to my agent, and we realized through many of our own conversations and speaking with you that this is not a huge 350-page book that we want to blow up into something.
And, as an avid reader and sometimes writer, I'm really frustrated with books that I feel, how many books do you read that you feel like damn, this would have been a really great 1,500 word article or something, you know, like, right? And then they just padded it with all this crap. And unfortunately the crap tends to be in the middle. So you like, you gotta like, you know, like, so the beginning and the end is actually where the good stuff is. And so I find myself, like, I strategically read books often, and I'm a big fan of, what is it, Blinkist now? I don't know if you know that.
Right.
They do like books, you know. So you can consume a book, you know, like you know, like I just did Brene Brown's new book in like, you know, 15 minutes. But it's great because now I know, like, well, I actually want to read the book, you know, like, because it's sort of, because some book, also many books, I'm just like, okay, I got everything I needed out of that. I don't need to read that book. And so, but anyway, with our book, I think we just wanted to, like, publishers do not like, traditional publishers don't like books of this size, you know.
Right. Absolutely.
So the first decision was, do we self-publish or do we not? And we also realized that we kind of wanted to get this thing done.
Yeah,
like, let's get it out there.
Traditional publishing takes forever to get a book.
So we're like, we want it short, we want it readable, we want it tool focused, and we want to get it done quickly. So let's do it on our own. So that was like the first level of decision. And the second level of decision was, we've launched books in the past. And I've you know, like, I have tons of friends. We have tons of friends who have published, both self-published as well as gone through traditional publishers. And, you know, a good friend of ours and the editor of my first book actually worked with Seth Godin on the Domino Project and all these sort of like alternative, like, so the publishing world is something that we kind of like looked at and studied a bit. But I think both of us we're good executors. Like, we're really good at, like, let's do stuff. And we're really good at, these are all the things that we might do, but there's this interstitial layer, which is where you guys came in, which was, and I remember we kept talking about the cut list, right? We're like, but what do we do? And in what order? Because there's so much that we could do. There's so many different ways to approach it these days. The publishing world is changing so rapidly. There's so many new tools. There's so many different ways that we might even conceive of this, like even how we position it, what we call it is such a big, every decision has a downstream impact. And I really just didn't know what to do next. And I didn't even know when we were going to get it. We worked on it for like a year and a half, and we're like, it's still sitting there.
Yeah.
We should get this out. We should, speaking of wanting to do it quickly.
One of the refreshing things with working with you guys is a lot of times business owners, you make a decision.
Yeah.
And that's hard sometimes to make decisions, but really the hard part and the gap is in the action.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, we need to take action, but where do we go first? And once we got down to, and it's gonna be a little businessy, we got down to the mission and your vision of, we want to get this in as many hands as possible and make it accessible and easily downloadable and available. That guided a lot of our decisions, and hence, you know, the tactics that we went into, and then also, you know, who we were going to be talking to and who this book is for. And as you mentioned, really it's for conversations and any kind of relationships that come up in business, home, family, work, life. So that was like the fun part of like hashing through all the different tactics and things like that. I mean, Nancy, do you want to talk a little bit more on the other components of that?
Well, I was going to say, but I remember the call and you're like, I need a cut list, Nancy. And I was like, all right, Bob, I got it. But as we were reading, I was like, I think we need to take a step back though and talk about, like, you know, there's this, you guys are all as individuals have your own very clear personal brands, but this was going to be the first time you were coming out into the world as, you know, Alex and Bob. And that was really fun to explore with you, because I think you needed, I think you were like, how's that going to work? What does that look like? And when you're in the middle of it, it might have been harder to see. So I mean, we're now on the other side. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in terms of, it was a no-brainer. We still feel like we have both or what was that experience for you guys?
Yeah, it was interesting because we're both kind of mentor, coach, consultancy, but two totally different segments. And this was like, we're bringing our brands together in a way and writing a book together that we hope speaks to both, and the brand speaks to both and more. So that process of coming together and making it individually appropriate for our businesses was just something that we were like, we were like treading water, like, where do we go? So our ongoing conversations with you was really helpful in that. And I'd say it's been really successful. Like, I feel like my audience loves this. Your clients in the corporate world definitely, I mean, you teach it all the time. It works really well. And it's given us an even broader platform. You know, we're going out now on podcasts and doing interviews, and it is broader than both of us would have had individually. So it's been really successful so far.
Nice. And I personally love the yin and the, there's a brand, but there's a yin and a yang to, that. And that I think you referenced, Alex, also was apparent in when figuring out the audience. Like, is this, marketers, well, everybody likes to say my product or my service is for everybody.
Right.
And those of us on the marketing side are like, no, you have to focus. And that was kind of a critical conversation piece, was business, personal. And I think you all landed and you held firm that we don't want to go necessarily in one or the other, because we've seen it transcend. And I think that's a little contradictory to what we all hear in the marketing world, that you've got to be really, really specific.
Well, we definitely did. I mean, I think the avatar, the person we had in mind, actually, it's funny, I don't even think she knows this, but she did write one of the blurbs on the book, was my friend Karen Austin, who actually just retired, she was the CIO of PG&E, the utility on the West Coast that I worked with for a couple of years. And really, she and people like her. And I think if I could describe Karen, is that she is somebody who is mid to late career. She has thrived. She's really excelled in her career, but it's been in a very male-dominated industry, and that she holds very feminine values of sort of like coaching and mentoring and connection. And she wants people to kind of come together. But her career, like, she hasn't been able to do that as much as I think that she would have liked. And I think this tool was very much like, we wanted to design it for people in business, I guess, who got the value of empathy, who got the value of connection, who got the value of team cohesion. A lot of people don't, and I think there are people. We have a thing we say often. We quote an FBI hostage negotiator on developing. He talks about developing something called tactical empathy. Like, so this idea that, like, empathy doesn't mean that you approve of everything the other person says, and empathy is not this like warm fuzzy thing. It's actually something that helps you get your stuff done. So we try to like spread it around a little bit in that way. But we also wrote about being able to take it home. And I remember when I first taught Karen this in a workshop a couple of years ago, she's like, "Oh, I can take this home and use this with my husband about something else." And I was like, exactly. That's exactly what we want. So I think our position was, let's start with the business world. Let's position it for the business world. And then let's mention that you can take it home. Like, it's a thing that you can play at home and be valuable. And one thing that's really, I think, really interesting now is, another one of our hypotheses along the way is that this would be localizable into different contexts. So this is like the first one, which describes sort of in a generic terms what the methodology is. But then what we can do, kind of like what Chicken Soup for the Soul did, how they did, we talked about this, right? How they did it in different versions. And now we're finding, like, sales teams keep reaching out to us. We're like, okay, sales teams, that's great. We're not sales people, but the sales training world is such a lucrative world and such an interesting world and such a valuable world, and so adjacent to what we already do anyway. So I think we might be contacting you soon because I think we need to reposition this as a getting to hell yes for sales. Like, what does that look like? Is that a whole new book? Is it like a little add-on to the book that then gets published as a separate thing? Is it, now with, sales or something like that?
And prior to us going live, we were just sort of talking about how, it's used for parenting, and not even just, with spouses, but, having, serious critical conversations. And I just think that using your framework, and empowering 12-year-olds, as we were talking about, is huge.
Yes. My friend who wrote the introduction she's an entrepreneur, and she's a mother of 5. And we had her write the introduction, not because she, we didn't get like the biggest name we could think of getting. We got someone who we knew personally, this had actually really helped them.
And that was your advice, actually.
And that was your advice.
You said,
Love it when it works.
Somebody who was moved by it.
Yeah, a super fan.
Yeah.
Who's using it, and Rebecca, who wrote it made us cry when she wrote this
Totally
intro.
made me cry. Oh my God.
It was
yeah.
so touching.
So beautiful.
And she is constantly reminding us, like, thank you. This has really helped me in my life.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, and to me, that actually feeds into the one of the questions, before we could do the cut list and figure out all these tactical pieces, Vicky's always very good in the big picture to sort of to say, all right, what is success going to look like for this project? And Vicky, you can talk a little more about that, because I think, again, this is where you all were not traditional in sort of what your end goal was for this. Vicky, do you want to sort of?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, as we mentioned before, is it was clear you wanted to get this in as many hands as possible, but how to make the message connect. And I think part of, in defining those parameters, we had to, talk a little bit about, is this realistic? And, what will happen, what can happen, not to alienate, again, your audiences. But at the same time, I think there's a little bit, and I think it's, defining those parameters, but I want to talk a little bit within this of the timing, just in general, especially, Bob, you've worked with many organizations. Alex, you've worked with many people. I think there is a sensitivity or an openness to having some kind of structured conversation just in terms of this, which I think lent itself to figuring out the success metrics. Because in the past, I don't know if something like this would have been as easily received in some organizations that, I've worked with and for, or was couched as something different, like courageous conversations of giving constructive feedback, which is still wonderful and relevant and important. But getting a hell yes is a whole other way to think about it. So I'd love to hear about the timing and how that, from your perspective, and how that lent itself to helping us define where we were going to go.
Well, we did kind of a hybrid of ideas. One is, there's a classic business book called Getting to Yes, which we acknowledge with the title. And we are in a time where a lot of catchphrases are being used in the corporate world, bringing your full self to work, and vulnerable leaders are the ones that are more successful. Well, how do you do that in a way that is truly safe and welcoming? And Bob has so many stories of people who they're like, I don't feel safe to bring my full self to work. And I have had so many clients who are women in corporate who have been penalized for bringing their full self to work, right? Revealing their vulnerable self, or or crying at work when your parents pass away has actually gotten them in trouble and passed over for promotions, that kind of thing. So there is a huge gap for how people can do this catchphrasey stuff in a real way that is helpful.
Yeah. And I think also where you took a slightly different path, because we haven't stated the obvious here, is this wasn't about we're trying to make money off this. It was really as many hands as possible. So with that, you chose to offer this for how much money?
$0.
For $0.
Right.
Amazon figures it out and dings us for it. Because you can buy it on Amazon. It's $1 for the Kindle and what, $6? $7 for the print. But on our website, you can download a PDF for free. We don't even ask for an email address. And I remember that was kind of a hot topic of conversation for us. And I was, we were, I had read or reread Seth Godin's, Unleashing the Idea Virus. And I think our idea really is that if we don't make a dime off of anything associated with the book itself, if we've unleashed an idea virus into the world that people find valuable, and already we're getting it coming back, like we just found something really beautiful on Instagram the other day, like this woman who was like, more on this book coming soon, and because we have a hashtag,
a soul cycle instructor.
We actually, during our first meeting, we started the hashtag on Instagram.
I have a picture of it. I have a picture of that.
Exactly. But yeah, that hashtag, somebody just used it a couple days ago, and then she reached out to us, and she wants to. Anyway, I don't know what kind of following, but anyway, it's just sort of nice signal that people are really finding it valuable, and I think that's our goal, is to just kind of have it out there in the world. Now, of course, as it's out there, we're also getting invited into companies to speak. which we're doing a little bit for free-ish right now, like buy 100 copies of the print book and we'll pay our travel and we'll come by. So far, we've had a couple of companies offer to take us up on that with some recognizable brand names, which is really great for us. And really, we just want this thing out there. And we've developed a couple of offerings and some price points and things, and we'll see how they go in the new year. I have a feeling that my intent is that Alex has, the Alexandra Jamieson, line of business, which is the mentoring that she does, as well as the coaching that she does and the groups that she runs. And then I do like strategy and organizational design work, which tend to be really high dollar value. Like if I sell, 2 things in a year, that's pretty nice for me, that's pretty nice. I do pretty expensive work, which is great. So just more people knowing about us is really fabulous. But I really do think that this is going to turn into a secondary line of business for us, around public speaking, as well as doing workshops within companies. I think that's going to be, and maybe public workshops too. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
And I think you say line of business, but to us, I feel like, and Vicky can say this, I feel like we kind of walked away from this was a mission. Like this was just something you guys have come to the conclusion, we can't ignore this any longer. It's a mission. And, and I remember we talked about we want people to be able to say I want to get to hell yes on this. Do you know what I mean? It was actually going to become a verb or, a phrase that you knew what that meant when somebody said, I want to do the getting to hell yes thing with this one. So I like that mission. And so we kind of worked with all those pieces. You guys had your cut list, and because you're so actionable, you literally hit the ground running. What were you took some non-traditional approaches, but what were either some secrets that you figured out or that you integrated in, or what were some surprises in your process to launch? Sort of looking back.
We have separate but very thriving networks. And we've done close to, at least a dozen podcast interviews, just reaching out to people we already knew. And everyone we've reached out to is like, yeah, let's do it. So we've continually been tapping our networks and sharing with our friends and people we've worked with in the past. And we've gotten great responses. It's been really enjoyable just to reach out and share this with people we already know. Fun fact, my literary agent just reached out on Friday and she's like, I've been listening to all your podcasts and I know you say that you didn't want to go with a traditional publisher, but something's going on here, so we should talk. So
I have goosebumps on that one.
I know. You never know what can happen when you're just putting it out there. And that's the benefit of you two joining forces on this, literally, for this mission.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's been interesting for me is, one is, that there's this idea that when you do a launch, that you want to do a really big bang, and and I've watched people do some amazing launches. Actually, I follow James Clear, and we're friends of friends. We share. I don't know if you know, he's on the New York Times bestseller right now with his book Atomic Habits. And, that dude is good, he's really good about and I've watched friends do this, and I've also watched friends do this and fail, there's probably 3 or 4 books behind us that where people really thought they were going to hit the bestseller list and then they didn't. Or we have a couple of books behind us, I know, where people invested $400,000 of their own money in order to buy the books, in order to hit the list, in order, so there's all these games that people play in order to kind of engineer this really, really big launch. And then, but I think the sort of the non-traditional thing that we did, or the non-traditional thing that the way we're still thinking about it, is that I want this thing to be around forever. And I want it to be a steady thing, not a all at once thing. And because we're doing it on our own, we have that luxury. We don't have to we don't have to earn out an advance. We don't have to prove anything to, you've worked with your publishers and you get their attention for 3 weeks after launch and then they just disappear, right? Traditional publishers really just don't help that much.
Yeah, at least now I'm doing it all by myself, whereas with publishers, you think they're going to do it for you and then you find out you're all doing it yourself.
But
exactly. On to the next book, next.
But the single most satisfying thing that I think we did, which I'm very proud of, is to put a counter on the website. So when you go to the website, all you have to do is click and you can download a copy of the book. And it doesn't even ask for an email or anything. And I know we discussed, the pros and cons of that, but I really wanted to remove all the barriers. And of course, it prompts you. We want to build a list. We're not anti-list, but I really just wanted to remove the barriers. I wanted to get the book in people's hands. But the counter tells it how many times it's been downloaded. And we looked at it just before this, and it's been downloaded 1,140 times as of a few minutes ago, and probably a little more now. And that's amazingly sad. Like we're both a little distractible. Like we have a lot of stuff going on, and we have a lot of ideas of stuff we want to do. And it's very easy to just kind of move on to the next thing. And I have to keep reminding myself to like come back to this and come back to the promotion and come back to the tracking and come back. But one really easy way to get motivated is to go to the website and say, ooh, more people downloaded it today.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like motivating for me. And I think also as it, like my hope is it's going to get up above 10,000 or 20,000 or, God knows, 100,000 at some point. And that kind of social proof also has a snowball effect. So that's really what we want. Like the idea was not big bestseller all at once, but the idea was how can we just have something that's like steadily infusing into a conversation in the culture. We also have some ideas for events that we want to run around it. And we have a lot of we're like kind of cooking up some other ideas right now, but it's more just like keep the pressure up. Just like, let's just keep it going. Yeah. Just keep it going. Keep it going.
It's percolating. And I think come January and even come after today, election day, we're going to need some frameworks for having these conversations, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do a hell yes for New Year's. Getting the hell yes for the 2019.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. Here comes the idea bubble.
There you go.
More things we need to throw out.
That's it. Well, I thank you all so much for your time. It was just a treat and a joy to it was a very non-traditional project. So it was really fun for us to be a part of it and help you get this launch. So I'll include all the links. Like you said, there's a free download or you can get the hard copy. But Vicky and I can attest that Bob and Alex are, follow them both separately. Follow Get On to Hell Yes. You won't regret it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your help. It was huge. And everybody, get out and vote today.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.